In this corner, Classic Spider-Man from Spider-Man Classics Series 2 by Toy Biz. And in this corner, Spider-Man from the Toy Biz Marvel Legends Sentinel series. And in this corner, Amazing Fantasy Spider-Man from the Hasbro Marvel Legends 60 Amazing Years collection. Each one is based on Amazing Fantasy 15, but which first appearance Spider-Man is number 1? Place your bets, it's time for another Versus. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Starting off with the packaging, and I actually don't have the box for Classic Spidey. It was a clamshell showing him crouching down on a Daily Bugle billboard, and on the back we saw a pretty nice write-up for Spider-Man. I also don't have the packaging for the Sentinel series. It was also a clamshell. Not nearly as nicely displayed, but it did have some really cool stats on the back, almost like a D&D character. And then there's the Hasbro one. It says it's for ages 4 and up, but I thought we warned children to stay away from things without windows. Real missed opportunity not to pose them like the cover, but at least it does have the artwork on the side. No info about this version of Spider-Man, but there is a barcode for those who want it. If you saw my Captain America Versus, you'd know I hate clamshell packaging, but you know what else I'm not crazy about? Not knowing what I'm getting until it's too late. If I had to choose a favorite, it would probably be the original Spider-Man Classics. I just really love how they have him posed on that billboard. For packaging, this round goes to Classic. Moving on to presentation, and Classic stands at just under 6 inches. Sentinel is technically taller, but because of his wide stance is a little bit shorter, and then Hasbro comes at just under 6 1/4. Classic is mostly just a repaint of the Series 1 Spider-Man. The only new tooling is the head. Unfortunately, because of that, the spider logo is not accurate. For its time, this was an incredible Spider-Man figure, and in a lot of ways does still hold up today. One of the things that really made this figure stand out were the etched-in webs. Instead of painting each individual web line, the whole thing was given a black wash. The result is that both the webs and the figure can look a bit inconsistent. They can also look kinda dirty. A similar technique was used on the Sentinel series figure. That said, this one is a lot cleaner. Once again, we get those signature narrow Ditko eyes, and this time he's been given the correct logo. We also see a different logo on the back. One of the things that really defines this particular figure are the very lanky proportions. It really does feel like a scrawny teenager is in that costume. And thanks to all those folds and wrinkles, it actually feels like a costume. It could be argued that the legs might be a bit too spindly. Additionally, his stance is really wide. He's also very let down by how the hands were executed. On the Classic figure, the middle and ring finger are articulated, that way Spidey can thwip. They even sculpted and painted the web shooter buttons. Because it was just 2 fingers, a relaxed pose looked pretty natural, but on the Sentinel series figure, each individual finger is articulated, so it looks very, very unnatural. Honestly, out of all of Toy Biz's innovations, articulated fingers is one I do not miss at all. Unless, of course, we're talking about Galactus. Modern figures have bypassed that problem by using alternate hands, and I do think that we are the better for it. This brings us to the new Hasbro one. Going into this review, I expected it to be a repaint of the Renew Your Vows figure, but that is absolutely not the case. The new figure is actually notably smaller. It's the same basic design, just smoothed out and less shredded. Honestly, I like it better. For one thing, I think this cuts a much more natural, more Spider-Man-like silhouette. For another thing, this is Spider-Man just starting out as a kid. Unlike the other 2 figures, the webbing is all painted on, but it's pretty clean. Pretty clean. Once again, we have that first appearance specific logo, and again the tinier logo on the back. Although we're going to be talking about it more in the next category, all the joints are pinless, and although we'll be talking about it during playability, there are tiny holes under his arms. All these years later, I still love the Classic. It really only loses points because of the incorrect logo, and I've got to admit I am way more impressed with the Hasbro one than I thought I was going to be, but at the end of the day, the sculpted webbing and wrinkles of the Sentinel series version really wins me over. For presentation, this round goes to Sentinel. Moving on to posability, and this is the category that made me want to do this as a 3-way versus. From the top, and all 3 heads are on ball joints. Additionally, the Hasbro figure has a disc hinge. This is in contrast to the retro card Renew Your Vows figure, which had a dumbbell joint. Thanks to that hinge, he can look up this far and down this far. Sentinel also has a disc hinge. He can look up this far and down this far. Classic only has the ball joint, but he also has an additional ball joint in the neck. Even so, he doesn't get a whole lot of up and down. All 3 have swivel hinge shoulders with Classic raising up this high, Hasbro only raising up this high, and Sentinel raising his arm up this high. He also has an extra hinge in the shoulder, allowing him to raise his arm up even higher. Hasbro has a butterfly joint. This allows his arm to move forward and back. Classic does not have either. He also doesn't have bicep swivel. Sentinel and Hasbro do, but one thing that all three figures do have is double jointed elbows. Classic can bend this deep, Sentinel can bend this deep, and Hasbro can bend this deep. These elbows are one of the main reasons I wanted to talk about all three figures. Much has been made of this figure having pinless elbows. That means that not only is there not a dot here, there also isn't a red dot interrupting the arms. Toy Biz compensated for theirs by painting them. As you can see, however, over time that paint does begin to chip away. That being said, Classic also has pinless joints, and this figure is 21 years old. It's taken us how many years for Hasbro to finally give us what Toy Biz gave us in the year 2001. Moving down the arm, however, and Hasbro has swivel hinge wrists. The two Toy Biz figures, however, are a bit more clunky. For rotation, each one has a cut at the glove, and then a hinge at the wrist. It serves the same function as Hasbro, it's just a bit uglier. But speaking of ugly, that brings us back to the fingers. As I said before, Classic has his middle two fingers fused together on a hinge. That allows him to do this. The main problem is he can't throw a punch. To compensate for that, Toy Biz gave the Sentinel articulation in each individual finger. In that regard, he can kinda make a fist, or fan out his fingers like Freddy Krueger. The downside again is that when relaxed, they look awful. Shifting to the torso, and all three figures are very, very different. Classic has a diaphragm joint and a waist swivel. He can arch back this far, hunch forward this far, roll around, and twist. Sentinel has an ab crunch and a waist swivel. He can arch back this far, hunch forward this far, and twist. Oh, so, first time? That does at least give us a unique opportunity to appreciate the ratchet system underneath. Below the waist, and Classic has a swivel hinge, and Hasbro has ball-jointed hips. Unfortunately, unlike Renew Your Vows, they aren't drop down. It also occurs to me that because of Sentinel's exploding crotch, I forgot all about this guy's torso. Similar to Renew Your Vows and Retro Card, he has a diaphragm joint and a reverse ab crunch. Using both, he can arch back this far, and hunch forward this far. He can also tilt and twist. Classic can kick this high, and do a perfect split. Sentinel can kick this high and split this far. Hasbro, however, can kick this high and split this far. Sentinel has twist at the top of his hip ball, whereas Hasbro and Classic have thigh cut. All three figures have double jointed knees, but Classic is pinless and bends this deep. Sentinel bends this deep, and Hasbro bends this deep. All three figures have boot cut, but whereas Classic can only hinge, both Sentinel and Hasbro can pivot. On the other hand, or foot, both Sentinel and Classic have toe ticulation. And seeing as how Retro Spidey and Amazing Fantasy have the exact same feet, there is no reason that they couldn't have given him the same feet as Renew Your Vows so that he could have had toe ticulation too. Over 20 years ago when Toy Biz was giving us pinless joints and toe ticulation. For better or worse, they were also giving us finger ticulation. As impressive as this new body is, and it is pretty impressive, it isn't even as posable as other Spider-Man figures released this year. For posability, this round also goes to Sentinel. Moving on to playability, and both Classic and Sentinel came with a reprint of Amazing Fantasy 15. Classic also came with a really cool section of wall, featuring a Daily Bugle billboard. Flipping it around, we can see that you can actually hang it on a wall, and truth be told, I still have mine hanging up to this day. The Sentinel series Spider-Man came with the head and shoulders of the Sentinel. He also came with a flight stand. You could also hang that up. It pegs into his back like so. All these years later, and I still kinda like this flight stand setup the best. No ugly clamps to break up the figure. The Hasbro one doesn't come with a diorama piece for a Build-A-Figure. It does, however, come with a handful of hands. We got a pair of fists, a pair of thwippies, and a pair of crawlies. He also has accessory holding hands. Not gonna lie, the paint job on them is a bit funky, but that's so he can hold this web line. He can hold that line like so. And remember these underarm holes? That's to accommodate not one, but two sets of web wings. There's a static, relaxed set, and also a dynamic set for swinging into action. I don't really see myself using it, but it does create some nice opportunities for figure displays and photography. And now that they've made the tooling, I'm sure we'll see it in other releases. It's worth noting this guy had web wings too. It was a fishnet piece that wrapped around his waist, neck, and arms, and like many a collector, I got rid of mine a long time ago. But playability is more than just web wings and wall-hanging diorama pieces. It's also about how well your figure plays with others. Kick Kicking things off, and here we have some basic Spider-Man variants, specifically Series 1 Spider-Man Classic and Renew Your Vows. Because of the pinless joints, it just seemed more appropriate than Retro Card. Here's the ever-popular black costume. Check out my black costume versus. It's between Retro and Mafex. Here we have Ben Reilly. Pardon me, I jostled the review station in between takes. To my knowledge, Toy Biz never made a classic version of him. As we can see though, they did make a classic version of 2099. The other version, of course, is the more contemporary Retro Card. First appearance Spidey and future Spidey. And here we have the Iron Spider. Strictly speaking, both are from Hasbro, but the new one is also part of the amazing 60 Years collection. For a couple of Spider allies, and here we have Miles and Gwen. Just think, when this figure came out, neither of these two characters existed. Now, they're beloved mainstays. For another important Spider-Man ally, and here we have Daredevil. This, of course, is classic and the first legend. I did just get word of the new 3-pack ship, so expect that review soon. For a sometimes ally and sometimes antagonist, and here we have the Black Cat. This is often cited as one of the worst Toy Biz Legend figures ever made, and I'd argue that the Hasbro one is one of the best Lady Legends ever. Once again, sorry if I jostled things in between takes. Here we have Peter's two great loves, Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane. Amazing to think that eventually these two would become superheroes in their own right. Finally, here we get to some villains. The darker Green Goblin is from Toy Biz, and the lighter one is the Hasbro Retro Card. Here we have Electro, again Toy Biz and Retro Card. I would love to see the skeleton on that Toy Biz figure. Here we have Kraven the Hunter. The Toy Biz one is the box set version, and if you haven't seen, Hasbro just announced an animated series version. Next up, and here we have Sandman. The Toy Biz one really towers over everybody. That said, the Build-A-Figure version is even larger. Here we have the Scorpion. That Toy Biz version still really holds up. I did just get the Retro Card version, so let me know if you want to see a versus of that. For a larger-than-life villain, and here we have the Rhino. Just like Scorpion and the Toy Biz one, still a pretty solid figure. If you haven't already though, check out my versus to see which one is the best Rhino ever. Speaking of versus, don't worry, Venom is still coming. I still have a few 2022 figures I need to get through in preparation for my annual top 10, so it's probably gonna have to wait until early January. For more Sinister Six representation, and here we have the Vulture. I do still really like the feathery wings on the Toy Biz version. Not only that, but I had to glue the Hasbro wings in place. Moving on, and here we have Mysterio. This was another solid Toy Biz offering. One of these days though, I should really get the Retro Card. Here we have Shocker. The lack of painted detail on the Retro Card really stands out when standing next to these two. I need to stop grousing and just do it myself. For our final villain, and here we have Carnage. The ugly joints are really the only thing holding the original one back. That said, I do prefer the cleaner paintwork on the new one. Here's everybody with Stan the Man Lee. Now if only we could get figures of Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby to go with it. For a relative scale comparison, here they are with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. And as always, here's everyone with Stealth Iron Man. Diorama pieces and Build-A-Figures are nice, but they can't compete with the sheer number of accessories that this guy comes with. For playability, this round goes to Hasbro. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. At the time of their release, both of these figures went for between $8 to $10. If you were lucky enough to snag them when they came out, that's great, but if you're a newer collector trying to decide on which figure is right for you, that's a different story. These days, new in box and classic goes for $30 upwards, and because of that Sentinel bath piece, this one goes for well over $100. If you don't mind them loose, you can get them for significantly less, or for only $28, you can get this one brand new right now. It's a long way from $10, but with 9 accessories, it's one of the best Marvel Legends values this year. For price, this round goes to Hasbro, tying him with Sentinel 2 to 1. As for personal preference, I'm still partial to this guy, but if all you want is a good, affordable, amazing Fantasy 15 figure, this one is pretty amazing. For more Spider-Man versus, check out this one on Ben Reilly, or this one on the black costume. Which one do you like best? Sound off in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.